Hey guys, this is Fergal from PokerVIP. We are back yet again, this time for part 3 of our 10NL Zoom coaching series. So we're going to be following the same basic formats as previously, where we're going to be playing two tables side by side. I will be just playing my standard game. I'll be talking through my thought process as we go. And hopefully you guys can pick up on a few little bits and bobs of information to improve your game. So here on the right table, we raised with the 5-6 suited from the button, pretty standard, pretty awful flop for us in general, so we just checked it down. At no point, if he had checked us on the river, I may have taken a small stab at this, but I'm happy enough now just when he led into us just to give it up. We're probably going to fire on this board though. It's a little bit less connected. There's obviously a decent number of high cards on it, but we have obviously pretty much all of the aces in our range here, so I think it's a decent enough board to fire on. We're going to bring the 5-6 suited in for an ISO versus the limper. So we bet we get called, which makes us sad. We have a gut shot now, so I think I'm happy just to check back, try to realize our equity. I'm not really looking to fire multiple streets on this board. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet though when we flop a pair here, primarily for protection, and because we're just going to bank the trips on the turn. So when he calls this dry board, I think there's a pretty decent chance he has a queen, so I'm actually going to go a little bit larger now, because I think there's a pretty decent chance that we get called. We get min raised, which is very peculiar. I'm not thrilled about the min raise, to be perfectly honest, but we're just going to put the money in. If he has pocket queens or something, oh wow, he's the king 6, that's kind of gross. Pretty unfortunate turn there for us, but hey, these things, they do happen. As I said, I don't think I'm ever planning on folding the trip 6s there. I for sure wasn't happy about getting min raised, but as I said, I don't think I'm ever going to find a fold there, so if he's min raising a bunch of kind of queen X, which he potentially might be, I'm happy enough just to shift the money in there and try to get max value from those types of hands. And as I said, if we're broke, then realistically, if we're beat rather, we're realistically going to be going broke either way, so I'm absolutely fine with our line there. Just a pretty unfortunate run. A very interesting call from him pre-flop though, calling the 3-bet with king 6, even in position, I'm going to suggest might not be the most profitable of things that you can do. We are going to be calling the 3s though in position, so we've immediately dropped a stack, which is never fun, but as I said, these things do happen. You can never be too upset. As long as you're happy with the line that you took throughout the hand, I don't think you should ever be that upset about hands going badly for you. So we flop a set over on the right table, which is quite nice. There's a bet and a raise, which is very tasty. We're going to call and try to keep Van Stroy in it. I think if we re-raise here, it just looks way too strong. It's very possible, if he's in any way competent, that he'll be able to fold a hand like jacks or queens here if we re-raise him there, so that's an absolute disaster for our hand. Interesting line there. I'm pretty surprised that he just snap folds. Very interesting. He's obviously just raising as a bit of a bluff, which isn't horrible on that kind of board for sure. I mean, that guy's lead out definitely stunk of weakness. So we make back a little bit of our money. We've still a bit of a way to go, but we're getting there. We're happy to check back here. We've got one overcard to the, we've got a pair obviously, which is nice. We have runner flush draws to the nuts, and we can always improve to 2 pair of trips as well. So we're going to start this off with a check. I meant to actually 3x this. This was a mistake on my part. So we improved to trips. Hopefully we have the best hand this time. Calling here would be absurd. We have to go for a raise. He snap fold, so again he was likely full of it there. It's pretty tough for us to have a 4 there, so our kind of line there does look kind of bluffy. We're not folding the ace-10 here, blind versus blind. We're happy just to check call this at least one street. Possibly more than that, to be honest. I mean, ace-high here stands to be good quite often. So what we're going to do now is just tank it down just a little bit before we check. Make it seem like we are pondering whether we should bet or whether we should check. And now we're going to go ahead and check. Hopefully this just goes check, check, and we win. If he does bet, I'm going to have a hard time folding, to be perfectly honest. Unless he has a hand exactly like 10 jack or 9x, it's kind of hard to see him taking this line, so I think I'm going to click call. Wow, interesting bet by Sever. I like his bet there a lot. Very few people are willing to go for thin value with a hand like third pair there. I really like that line. So well played him. As I said, it's very, very unusual that you see people going for those kind of thin values. So usually speaking, if people are betting that river, it means they have a hand like top pair or they are completely full of it. It's very unusual to see kind of merge betting range there. Again, here we have the nut no pair, and this guy is aggressive. We're never considering folding. We've got a lot of good blockers to his king X. Because this guy is so aggressive, we are in an unfortunate spot now where I think we kind of have to call down. Jack isn't my favourite card, but again, we do block some of his Jack X as well. And he has, unfortunately, just the pocket pair good enough to not be counterfeited in that spot. Interesting, we could have considered turning our hand into a bluff there to fold out that type of hand, but I'm not sure if I love that line or not. It is definitely an option, but I think I prefer just taking our showdown value. We're going to go ahead and use the ace-7 as a 3-bet bluff though. Use our ace blocker. And we're going to start off with a bet here now that this is checked through, and we are going to c-bet the king high board for sure. So we pick up that pot uncontested, which is nice. We don't know much about the blinds. The big blind seems on the aggressive side, but it's over a very small sample. We only have 26 hands on them. I think we're just going to let this go. I wouldn't hate a raise, but I think it's going to be a marginal loser there to open. It's definitely going to be close though. If we had a bit more information on the blinds, then we could definitely look at making that open for sure. If the blinds are on the tighter side, for example. The fact that we hadn't indicated that the big blind was on the aggressive side, though, makes it more likely to be an easy enough fold. We're going to click call here, as long as Algorithmos does not come along for a 4-bet. If he calls, we'll be even happier to make the call. But we're getting 2-to-1 direct odds, and this guy he started off with 100 BBs, so we're going to be absolutely fine to click call here. This is one of the advantages of opening smaller on the button. It means that we can call 3-bets with a lot more speculative hand like the pocket 2s. This is one of the better boards for us that doesn't contain a deuce. I'm not going to be going anywhere just yet. The ace is good and bad. Obviously, we pick up more outs, but he has a decent number of ace-x in his range here. When he fires on this, I think we're just going to give it up. Let me think. We have 2 outs to the deuce, which are almost certainly good. We have 4 outs to the 3s, which again are always going to be good. The pocket 2s occasionally are going to be good here, but I don't think very often. But I am kind of considering a re-raise here as a bluff. I think I'm just going to go ahead and give it up though. We flop a very strong draw over on the left table though. Obviously we've got a gut shot and we have a flush draw to the nuttarinis. We're going to go ahead and put in a squeeze with the ace-10. We get check raised here, which is quite interesting. I think with the amount of equity that we have, I'm just going to go ahead and raise, get it in here. Best case scenario, there's some worse flush draws he can get it in with. If he has a hand like, say, for example, King Jack of Spades, that'd be amazing. Obviously, that's not all that likely, but we have taken such a strong line here. It wouldn't be absurd for him to fold a hand like Queen X, which is a great result for us. And as I said, if we do get the money all in, we have a huge amount of equity anyway, so we're never going to be that upset about it. A fold there is definitely a good result for us, though, for sure. Anytime that you can win a reasonable pot with ace high, it's always a good result. Calling the ace-jack in the button here wouldn't have been absurd, but I definitely prefer putting in the 3-bet when we have position. This board I am not in love with by any stretch though. They're going to have a very decent number of pocket pairs that are not likely to be folding on this board. They're going to have some sets for sure. They're going to have hands like 8s, 9s, 10s, that kind of thing. So I think I'm just going to be checking this one back and giving it up if we don't improve. Not to the 10-cent bet, obviously. We do not need to be good very often at all to make this call profitable. And we're going to fire out a c-bet on this board though for sure. I really don't like this situation, but getting 15-1, we can never consider a call. So we all chop it up, ace-king versus ace-king versus ace-jack, and only the ace-kicker plays. What has happened here? We 3-bet pre, we c-bet the flop, he called, the board went check check on the turn. Interesting. I'm going to go for an overbet here on the river. I think it's very unlikely that he has a very strong hand here, so I quite like the overbet line here. It's very tough for him to call with a lone 10, I think. So we get that fold through, which is always nice. And over on the right table, we have gone for a 4-bet versus the min 3-bet. We're just going to call here. I treat the min bet essentially as a check, so I'm just checking. He comes out and he absolutely bombs the turn for pot, which makes me sad. I guess we're going to go ahead and fold. And on the left table, we raise the button with a raggedy suited king. We pick up the flush draw, so we're going to go ahead and c-bet. So we have clawed back some of the dollars that we lost earlier on in the session. Hopefully by the end of the video, we're going to be in profit. That's my goal, as is the goal for any of my poker sessions. And suited ace, definitely good enough to be 3-betting a button open. Calling definitely isn't out of the question though, because we're deep. But again, when the options between calling and 3-betting and both are viable, usually I go for the 3-bet rather than the call, as I'm sure you're all well aware at this stage. And when we get 4-bet here, we are just going to go and muck our cards. We have no 7 on the flop, unfortunately, but it is ace high. So again, we're going to go ahead and fire a bet out here. Again, primarily for protection. We don't want to check back and see another overcard roll off and then have him start betting into us. It's going to be very difficult to know how to respond. So I think just going ahead, putting out a small feeler bet on that flop is going to be very profitable for sure, and it avoids us making mistakes later on in the hand of folding a winning hand for sure if he starts bluffing at it. Which it's going to be very difficult to call down with 7s on a lot of different runouts, so I think I prefer just trying to pick up the pot there and then for sure. Generally speaking, I'm not an advocate for making kind of information rate bets as they're known, for good reason. They're not going to be the best thing, but on that kind of particular type of board, I think it's going to be absolutely fine. As just a kind of one and done. Just when our hand is likely to be the best, but it's going to be very tricky to play in a lot of runouts, I think it's important to try to take the pot down earlier rather than later in that kind of spot. So we flop an open ender and we're multi-way here. I think we're able to call again here. Obviously it's possible we're drawing dead, but it's not all that likely on the paired board. And I think if we do hit, we have a decent enough chance of getting paid. Like, I think a hand like King 10 there was going to be pretty likely to call a river bet there if we hadn't proved. Those are the types of hands that I was expecting to show up there fairly frequently though, so I don't like trying to bluff him off that type of hand on the river. So I'm absolutely fine with the line that we took there and just checking back and giving up. And the ace-jack here, it's actually an okay flop for us. He shouldn't have connected very well with this. We block a lot of his king x and his queen x, and the board obviously blocks a lot of them as well itself. So I think ace-jack here is going to be good somewhat often. And we have a gut shot as well to almost the nuts. And we're gonna click call here and see what the river brings. When he chooses this sizing, it's pretty tough to see him bluffing. I think if he was bluffing, he'd be going on the larger side for sure. This seems to me like he's trying to eke out some weak value with the queen x. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I don't think, with the way that we've played the hand, I don't think we're going to be able to fold out a queen ourselves with the bluff raise. And I think calling there is going to be a losing proposition. So I'm fine just sticking the cards in the muck, making the fold. And versus the 3-bet, we're not continuing with our raggedy ace. I think we're going to go ahead and open the 6-3 though. Not in love having a short stacker in the big blind, but I still think it's going to be fine. When we get 3-bet here, we have position. We have a hand that has the potential to flop well. I don't love this, but I am going to click call and see a flop. The fact that we're a little bit deeper than 100 BBs is definitely influencing my decision. I think if either of us only had 100 BBs to start the hand with, that I'd be clicking the fold button, but I think the fact that we're just that little bit deeper with the 130, 135 BBs, we're going to be okay just to see a flop. And when we do flop a pair, I'm not planning on going anywhere just yet. Obviously, he's going to show us ace-x a decent amount of the time, but he's also going to not have an ace a lot as well, and in those situations, he's likely to be check giving up on the turn. So we pick up a gut shot. I think we have enough showdown values to check this back, though. Problem is, though, now we kind of have to call a river bet. If he makes it, we're definitely happy to check, though. We are correct. Our pair of sixes is indeed good. So betting that turn wouldn't have been absurd when we get checked by any stretch. But as I said, I think we do have enough showdown value that we're able to just check it and try to induce some more bluffs on the river. As I said, I wouldn't have been thrilled if he'd bet the river, but I don't think I was planning on folding. And king, queen offsuit is good enough for a 3-bet on the button. We have been 3-betting a little bit more aggressively than usual. We're at the 15% mark at the moment, which is definitely above my standard 3-bets, but hey, it's good to be aggressive, right? We are going to start this off with a bet here. He snap fold, which is nice. With the king queen there, it's fairly important that we fold out a lot of his ace-x, which he's going to show us sometimes for sure. And by betting there, it will allow us to fold out a lot of his weak pocket pairs there. Not necessarily on the flop, but on a lot of different runouts, we can put him under a huge amount of pressure if he does continue there. Like his continuing range there, he's gonna really struggle to get to showdown there versus me. When he checks that flop, unless he's check raising the flop. We're going to be able to barrel on a huge amount of runouts and put a lot of his likely flop calling range under a huge amount of pressure there. So I think he was, even if he has a weak pocket pair, which I think he will show us a decent amount, he's essentially going to be drawing to 2-outs there more often than not, because while he is ahead, he's just, as I said, he's just never getting to showdown unless he hits a set. So I definitely like our bet on the flop. Just once that we're willing to follow through I mean, of course, like obviously, if we're just firing a one and done on the flop on the 4-deuce-deuce or the deuce-4-4, I can't remember which, I don't like it. But if you are willing to put in multiple barrels on different runouts, I do love it. We're going to be happy just to check the deuce and the jack off suit. Obviously, it's a complete trash hand. When there's the ISO raiser, it's a simple fold. Be interesting. I haven't actually played on Pokerstars now in a few weeks. I've been playing on a different site that's running a fairly generous promotion at the moment, which is why I've moved my volume at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how the player pool has been impacted by that promotion. There's a lot of faces. I don't have many tags here at all. I never had a massive amount of tags because obviously the player pool is large, but I haven't seen any yet, I don't think. So that would indicate that a lot of people have moved site, at least temporarily. So I'm hoping that would equate to an overall weaker field. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze with the ace and the 10. This board is pretty difficult for him to have connected with, so even though I don't really like doing this that often on a complete stone cold bluff, but I just think he's going to miss this board an insanely large amount of the time, so I think this 3-bet, this raise is going to be very profitable in general. Usually I like doing those kind of bet raises with at least some sort of equity. Like there we have a backdoor flush draw and a very, very bad backdoor straight draw, that's it. But again, I just think the board was dry enough and he's just going to be bet folding enough that that's going to be very, very profitable. So we're slowly but surely making our money back. Interesting. So we flop top pair here. Obviously we have some serious kicker issues. I am going to start off with a bet though, and we definitely want to charge 10x to draw. Players can have kind of gut shots, those types of hands, and I don't think we're going to get raised very often in this type of board unless somebody has a very strong hand. So rather than letting two people have a free card, I think I definitely prefer the bet, although it's not an amazingly good spot for us by any stretch. Top pair good kicker though is definitely going to be good enough for a value c-bet. There are a decent number of straight draws, worse top pairs, second pairs and so on that can call us here. 6 isn't amazing, 7-8 gets there, but that's going to make up a reasonably small portion of the range. So we're going to be betting again for value to get, again, value from the similar hands like Queen Jack, hands like 10 Jack, hands like 10 Queen, those types of things. Some 9x may call 2 streets, but that's a little bit optimistic. The Jack is a pretty atrocious card for us there. One of the worst in the deck, actually. A lot of the hands that I was targeting there have now gotten there against us, so I'm definitely just going to be checking this one back. So he calls with 9-3, very, very light call down on 2 streets. On every street, pre-flop, flop, and turn were all very light on his part, I feel. I would assume if he's calling turn, there's actually a reasonable chance he was going to call river as well, actually, but maybe not. I still, like as I said, given the kind of hands that I was expecting him to show up with there, I definitely don't like betting the river. He's going to river 2 pairs somewhat often. He's going to river a hand like a Jack as well, with hands like Queen Jack. There's another overcard if he does have a worse 10. If he has a hand like Queen 10, it'll be tougher for him to call down. If he has 9x, it's tougher for him to call down. So I definitely don't like betting the Jack there at all. Even when we pick up the gut shot here, I kind of just struggle to find what hand he beats. If he checks this flop, I presume he's going to be checking it with some ace-x, for sure. And if he checks it with his complete air, then it's unlikely that he's going to start betting his air on the turn, I feel. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold. Kind of sucks though when we picked up the gut shot as well. As you may have understood from my previous videos, I'm not a huge fan of folding. I do like getting the money in when I feel that I have a decent edge there. Just there, I don't think I had much of an edge. Here I think we can call. It sucks being out of position, but we have a hand that, again, it's going to be reasonably easy to play post-flop. This isn't a hand I'm not going to be going berserk with it, but I'm certainly not folding to a single bet. To a 16 BB shove, this is actually kind of close. I think we're going to fold. Can't be far off a call though. We're going to be dominated here very, very often. So he fires again, which I'm not in love with. I am going to call again. The ace is a pretty... It's a mixed bag. It's kind of hard to see him having a huge amount of ace-x here, actually. I'm tempted to go for a large bet ourselves. That's what I'm going to do. Let's see how this works out. Hopefully I don't get snap called and look really silly. He snap folds, which is very nice. Here we flop a set on one of the more dangerous of boards to have a set. Oh, and that's just a pretty awful turn for us. So our hand has gone from very strong to very weak. However, we do have a lot of outs to improve to a very strong hand again, so we're going to click call. And then we're just going to fold on the river if we get barreled into. Somehow we're good there. Very interesting. Pretty shocked that he must have been bluffing there. So he hit ace-king. That's an interesting bet with ace-king there. I don't like it at all. He has some showdown value, but on that board, very little. So, and if he's going to bet it, he's essentially turning his hand into a bluff, so I feel he should be barreling the river there. He definitely could have folded me out on the river for sure. Interesting that he didn't flop as well when he flopped top pair, top kicker. So here we have a gut shot and ace high, and so we're gonna go ahead with a bet. We're gonna continue, represent a stronger hand than we have. So we get that through, which is always nice. And we're pretty much back to even now, which is quite nice. We got off to a pretty bad start earlier on, obviously losing the stack at the beginning of the hand, or at the beginning of the game, should I say. But we're pretty much back to even now for the session, so hopefully we can start making some strides there and run up a bit more of a stack. Money follows money after all. I always find that once I kind of get off to a decent start, like I much prefer playing deeper stack poker for sure. And I think you can apply a huge amount more pressure, especially to the other larger stacks in the pool as well. So I find that my win rate when I have a bigger stack is definitely increases. So the larger, not necessarily the larger stack I have, the higher it goes, but once There's a bit of a linear correlation. I have kind of looked into this in my database as to how I do when I have different stack depths. And there is a bit of a linear correlation up to around about the 200 BB mark. Once I cross the 200 BB mark, it stays fairly constant though. Mainly because there's very few people in the pool with larger than 200 BB stacks anyway. So that would stand to reason. But yeah, so if you feel that you've got an edge in the pool, which I definitely feel I do here, you want to be playing as deep stacked as possible. The ace rolling off, if this wasn't a heart, I think I'd be betting this and representing the ace, but when we have the flush draw to go along with our pair, I think I'm happy just to check this down and try to get it to showdown. So, interestingly, that is the queen, and he doesn't choose to bet it at any point. I'm going to assume that we weren't going to get him to fold on the river with the bet. Because obviously the pot is so small, any bet that we would make would have to be within reason small enough as well, and I think he's probably just going to pick us off there with the pair. So again, happy enough with how we played there. I think we lost the minimum. Ooh, we get 3-bet and there's a caller. I think we're going to have to come along for the ride here. Obviously, if we flop a single pair hand, we're going to have to play it reasonably cautiously. It's definitely not a hand where, like, you know, a single pair hand with king queen is definitely not something that we're going to be looking to get all of the money in. We're going to start off with a check here and see what comes to be. So here we're actually in a bit of a tricky spot because this guy is a very tight 3-better from what we know. We are going to start betting here, and we're going to barrel rivers here as well. I think we're just going to call with the ace king. So when F or man AV checks this flop back, I'm going to assume he very rarely has an ace when it's multi-way. And when black skull checks to us on the turn, again, it's pretty unlikely that he has one as well. So the likeliest types of hands that people can have, especially when it was a 3-bet pot, are hands like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, especially because we block kings and queens. So here I'm kind of interested to see what happens here in this hand. I'm going to assume this is a reasonably strong hand versus another potentially strong hand. I'm going to assume Mikhail here is always going to have a decent hand. So it's just a question of how strong CH of war is, or of W rather. So he's tanking. It looks like he's just going to go ahead and click fold. Oh wow, he jams. So overpair versus overpair. Yeah, I'm not at all surprised to see that. So we would have lost both of those runouts, so I'm absolutely fine. Obviously, we're never going to be getting all of the money with ace king anyway, so it's a moot point. I think like that kind of situation, I think that's a pretty decent example of where a lot of people go crazy with the hand like ace king when it's going to be, in general, it's going to be a marginally losing proposition. I mean, it's very rare that people are going to get all of their money in with the hand worse than ace king. So usually if the money goes in, you're going to be flipping a vast majority of the time, I find. At these stakes, at least, anyway. Like, I mean, it's very unusual that people get, you know, hands like ace queen, ace jack, suited aces. It's very unusual that those kind of hands go all in pre-flop. So when you get ace king in, it's rare that, you know, it's rare that you're absolutely drawing dead, but it's also rare that you're crushing as well. And usually you're going to be marginally behind versus their pocket pairs. So it's going to be a long-term losing proposition in general. Here, despite having a straight flush draw, we're actually going to click the fold, are we? Yeah, we are. It's going to be very tricky to extract value there, and we're going to have our flush in general is going to be dominated there quite often as well. So I think I'm happy just folding. But going back to my ace king point, as I said, it's going to be a marginally losing proposition to get the money in, versus a lot of the range that people are getting the money in willingly against. This is kind of upsetting when the heart comes in and this guy continues to barrel. I think we actually just have a somewhat tight fold here. Actually, it's not that tight at all. I think it's a pretty straightforward fold. The majority of the range that we were ahead of on the flop is now ahead of us. So, and it's possible that we were in trouble on the flop as well. You can very easily have sets there and so on as well. Interesting. Do we want to go for value with the 2 pair here on the 4 to a straight board? I don't think we do. I'm going to check this back. Ace queen. I wasn't expecting to show up with very many ace queens there at all. Possibly we missed a little bit of value there, but I don't think checking that back can ever be that bad. Sorry, excuse me. So ace jack suited, I think. Oh, we were going to call. When it gets 3-bet by a shorter stack, I think we're actually just going to make a nearly fold. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. Kind of sucks that guy was short stacked. If he was full stacked, we may have considered playing. We have no information on that guy as to in terms of his aggression or anything like that. We have a very small sample on him, so we don't really know what sort of hands he's doing that with in general. And obviously everyone's range consists of a lot of better hands than ace-jack, so I'm just not sure how many worse hands it consists of. So when we don't really know someone's range, a lot of people 3-bet very tight in this pool, so I think we're going to be fine just folding that. I mean, even out of position against a wide range, ace-jack isn't going to play amazingly well anyway. If we were in position, it'd be a different scenario, but out of position, it's going to be quite tricky to play. So we block a lot of his queens, except for ace-queen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fire, and we're probably going to double barrel. Actually, maybe we're not. Let me think about this. Yeah, no, I think we're going to double barrel on most turns. Seems like a reasonable plan of action to me. So easy open with the king and the queen of the offsuit. When we get 3-bet, I think we're just going to go ahead and fold it. If we were suited, we can consider calling. When it's 4-bet, it's obviously a very easy fold. Pocket queens over on the right table, though, will be good for a 3-bet for value. Nice and deep versus will go crusty as well. So not much going on. We're going to keep folding through until we get a hand that is worth playing. King 10 is not too shabby, but under the gun I think it'll be a little bit loose. It wouldn't be that bad, but I think it will be marginally unprofitable. We get rewarded with pocket jacks in the next hand in the big blind though, so it's going to be good enough for a 3-bet. We get called, and it's one of the worst boards for us. 2 overcards, which is never fun. I think we're just going to be checking, giving this up. Some decent turn for us. We pick up a flush draw, and the fact at the speed that he checked back here, I think we're going to get this to showdown somewhat often. I think we're just going to bet small for value now. See if we can get a worse flush to call, which we do. So I'm guessing he had a worse pocket pair to the jacks that also had a flush. Wow, he had trips with the 4 and the 5. Interesting call pre. And interesting call on the river as well. I'm not in love with either of them. So if we get raised here from the cutoff, I think we're just going to flat call in on the button with our 6s. Seems like a decent plan to me. We're going to be using the king and the jack offsuit as a 3-bet. When it's folded to us in the button, so we obviously have an easy open with any pair. So we're going to go ahead and put in the 3-bet here. So this guy 3-bets, and he 3-bets on the larger side, which is a little bit more upsetting. We're not getting as good a price. I think we may just have a fold. We're not really getting the correct direct implied odds anyway. And again, once we're 4-bet, very straightforward folds. Interesting though, both of these guys, over a small sample, they do look on the regular side of things, so I wouldn't be shocked to see if this guy is one of the players that actually is capable of a 4-bet bluff in that dynamic. And if people are 4-bet bluffing, that is obviously a great spot to do it when you have somebody who is opening the button wide, who has a reg-ish player in the small blind 3-betting, which is going to be lighter than the average 3-bet for sure, for small blind versus button. So it is a great spot for a 4-bet bluff, but we don't have enough evidence to indicate that they are capable of that level of thinking just yet. The majority of people in this pool certainly aren't, so until I'm proven otherwise, I will assume that my opponents are not. And we're just going to call here with do we want a 3-bet here? No, we're just going to call with the weak ace. Decent flop for us. Top pair, top kicker with ace-6 is a pretty unusual scenario. The big blind here seems very tight, so we're happy enough to open up on the button. We definitely could have raised this flop, but I don't mind just calling down either. Like we don't really want to go bloating the pot more than we have to. We're just going to bet super small here for protection. Checking this turn and then just calling all rivers isn't absurd either though. It's actually possibly might be marginally better than the line that we just took. We're definitely checking back here now. I wouldn't be shocked to see a hand like pocket sevens or pocket eights here. So that is exactly what he has. I'm not sure if we're getting that type of hand to fold to a river bet though, so I definitely don't like taking another stab. We have some showdown equity for sure, so I don't hate our line. But yeah, as I said, when he check calls the turn, I'm definitely not shocked to see him showdown with a marginally better hand than he has, like exactly what he showed up with. And I still do think that we have enough showdown value that we're okay just to check it back. So we have a choice between 3-betting and calling with the eights. I think I'm going to lean towards a call. I'm happy enough to play a multi-way pot with a hand that can flop insanely strongly very often. Hopefully this checks through and the 8 of spades rolls off. That'd be quite nice. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to realize any equity. There's very little that we had. Easy 3-bet, or easy c-bet should I say, with the flush draw. There's very similar hands on both tables, the weak suited aces that can flop a wheel. We're going to go for steal with the jack and the 8, I think. And again, we're happy enough just to call and see a flop. Dream flop here for us. This guy donks out into many people. I don't think he's going to be doing this as a bluff, like as a stone cold bluff that often. So if he has 8x, we don't want to just call because there's going to be a huge amount of random overcards that can fall that are going to slow him down. So I think I'm just going to raise here and try to make him make as big a mistake as possible on this flop. If he has a worse 4 as well, we can make lots of money. We're just going to keep raising here, I think. If he somehow has us beat, we're going to lose a very substantial pot, I think. So he folds, which obviously means that we for sure had the best hand anyway. Interesting decision here between the squeeze and the call with the king-queen. I think I'm going to opt towards calling. We flop absolutely nothing at all. So if Zigamo's c-bets here, we may actually consider a re-raise here. It's just our line looks very, very credible for a lot of 10x and so on. And he's not going to have connected overly strongly with this board very often. So I think this is going to be directly profitable. We have overcards and we have some backdoor equity as well. We have some straight draws, we have some flush draws and so on. And we get the bluff through, which is nice. Queen Jack suited is an absolute beautiful hand to 3-bet bluff. We block a lot of strong aces. If he has a hand like Ace King, we are not dominated and so on, so it's an absolutely fine hand to implement into your 3-bet bluff strategy, as well as some 4-bet bluffs for sure. Ace King, we're going to be 3-betting, but for value this time, not as a bluff, unless it's folded to us, in which case we will just be winning the blinds. Fortunately, roulette does not let our hand go to waste though, so we're going to bring it in for the 3-bet. We probably could have sized up a little bit here actually because we're so deep. As mentioned already, 4x is our standard 3-bet size when we're out of position, but if we're deeper stacked, we can increase that a little bit. So maybe instead of going to $1, maybe make it $1.10, $1.15, that kind of thing. So we've opened up with the ace 10. We don't really mind. We don't want to get 3-bet here, but we don't mind a call by any stretch. This guy again, when people are short stacks, we're going to assume that they are not the best players in the pool by any stretch. So there's going to be a decent number of pots where we can outplay them for sure. I don't love this board, but I think it's going to be fine to c-bet. So we've gone from a significantly losing start, and we're back up in profit now. We're up near just over a half a stack now, which is quite nice. A nice little turnaround. And it's kind of an important lesson to note on how sometimes, you know, you lose stacks. It's impossible to play poker and never lose a stack. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen very, very often. But if you continue playing your regular game, you know, things will turn around, and hopefully they'll turn around quickly rather than later. We definitely have picked up a few nice spots since then. I'm actually going to check this board back. I'm not in love with this board at all. It connects really, really well with a lot of their kind of flat calling ranges, their pseudo connector cards, their, you know, those types of hands. Some Broadway hands. He's going to have a decent number of Jack X and so on here. So I don't love c-betting there by any stretch. Easy open here, blind versus blind with the 8-9 suited though. The big blind here seems very, very nitty over a small sample, and the small blind is much the same. He's not quite as nitty, but he's definitely on the nittier side, so we're definitely happy to open the queen and the 7 off suit. When we do get 3-bet, it's an easy fold. I'm actually just going to call here. I'm not a huge fan of 3-betting ace-queen suited versus under the gun open from the blinds. So I'm fine just calling and keeping his range as wide as possible. Great flop for us, obviously, top. I think we're just going to be in check call mode here for the most part. If he checks back the turn, we will probably bet the river. If he bets the turn, we're going to call and we're going to check river. It's just one of these spots where we're going to be good here very, very often, but raising at any point doesn't really accomplish much. It's going to fold out all of his bluffs. There's not a huge amount of hands that we're that afraid of. I'm not loving the triple barrel at all. I'm actually kind of concerned now, but I don't think we're ever going to fold here. So that's pretty much the absolute bottom of his range there, and I'm pretty surprised that he went for 3 streets there. I think that's a pretty bad triple barrel. The open pre-flop is fine. The bet on the flop is obviously fine. I like the bet on the turn for the most part, but I think on the river he should be checking that hand back. Top set here, which is going to be good for a bet. And here we're going to continue betting, but we're going to size down. What we're doing here is essentially just trying to set our own price to get to the river at. So if he has a hand like King X and we check to him, he's likely going to bet himself. So what we're going to do is put out what's called a blocking bet to avoid him betting a larger amount so that we can realize our equity for as cheap a price as possible. So as I said, we just bet on the smaller side of things, and well, we got the fold and he folded very quickly, which is absolutely a fine result as well. But versus his kind of King X hands there, it's going to be absolutely fine putting in the small blocking bet there. A lot of people don't react very well in the pool to them. They're just going to be calling when in reality, it's actually a very transparent play. It's something that I have great success with, though. I definitely do it a reasonable amount of these stakes, and people just don't seem to be that wise to it with those kind of hands where you definitely want to see a river, but you're not going to be ahead that often. Just putting in a smaller bet to essentially just to, as I said, just to buy a cheaper river card for yourself when you have a lot of potential equity that you want to realize for as cheaply as possible. I think we're gonna have to click call here. If he bombs river though, I don't know what to do. I think we may just have a fold on our hands. It's kind of hard to see him betting twice here on a bluff. Like after we call the turn, it kind of just looks like we have a hand that we're going to be calling down fairly often. So yeah, I think it's pretty unlikely he's doing this as a stone cold bluff, and all of his value beats us pretty much, or we're chopping with. I should have bet this flop. I checked back without thinking there. This flop should have been a c-bet, I think. When we do check back, unfortunately, we kind of just have to give up now. We can't really credibly rep anything here. So that hand was definitely a mistake. Unfortunately, if you play poker, you're definitely going to make them from time to time. So we're getting to the end of the video now. We're just coming up to the 45-minute mark now. So I am going to cut it. I hope you all enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed making it. Make sure to like it, to share it on social media, get the message out there. I do monitor the comments quite closely on both YouTube and on PokerVIP, so if you have any questions at all, feel free to fire them at me, and I will get back to you within a day or two. I check them out maybe once or twice a day. So as I said, any questions at all, feel free to fire them my way, and I will get back to you shortly. But yeah, so I'm just going to sit out here now and finish up. And we've got one last hand, so let's bring it in for a 3. Let's see if we can make this an interesting one. And easy fold is just a deuce in the 3. So this will be the last hand of the session. Let's see what happens. Hopefully we don't get 4-bet. If we get 4-bet, we kind of have to fold. I never looked at this guy's 4-bet pre. We have yet to see him do it over a tiny sample, but he hasn't folded to 3-bets as of yet. Likely only over a sample of 1 though. Looks like he's thinking about folding this one though, which he does, and shogi calls though. We're going to be checking back this board. He's going to have connected reasonably well with sets. He's going to have a decent number of pocket pairs, I feel here. Some suited connectors. On the king here, this is going to be a great card if he's checked to us. We are going to be betting and repping a hand like ace king for sure. And we block all of his strong king x, which is nice. We get the fold through, which is always good. But yeah, as I said, that's me for this session, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. Take care.